Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco, sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
The connection between Maori people and trees is very strong because Maoris are very much attuned to nature, attuned to the spiritual. Although it's a living tree, I pay homage to it by immortalising it in a sculpture or a carving. This is normally the type of tree that I would use to carve because of its qualities, because of its size. This tree in particular, it's native. It can withstand a lot more in the elements, and the grain makes for a beautiful finish. There's something special about native timbers. I guess it's the age. Some of the timbers that I carve, over 500, 600, 800 years old. That timber has seen time, it has seen mankind come and go. That's where the value lies. Tēnei taku karakia ki te tangohia rākau, e ihua, kaharawa, nau nei ngā mea katoa. The reason why we karakia or do a prayer beforehand is to pay homage for taking the tree where te timatanga me te whakamutunga o ngā mea katoa. I first of all pay homage to Io Matuanui, the creator, and to Tāne Wea, who is the guardian of the forest. Ko koe te timatanga, ko koe te whakamutunga o ngā mea katoa. Doing the karakia just clears the way to cut the tree down and clear the way for carving. Ai nei ake nei, āmene. And her name is Hine Te Ariki, who was a chief's daughter, who in times of war and peril, she used to roll boulders down on top of the enemy. We have many beautiful stories, throughout Maoridom that you never hear of until situations like this where I have to do the sculpture and the carving. Out comes this beautiful story about this woman. That's a warrior, princess if there ever was one. Cutting lines into the bark and into the wood, basically it just gives me reference lines. You have to have a centre line which keeps everything in proportion. For me to get my levels and my lines, I have to block it out like a block man first, and then from there I'll start rounding everything. Most of the time I'm able to look at a piece of wood and I can see what's in it. Sometimes it'll happen straight away, and other times it might take a few days for that to come through. From the cuts I've made already, a lot has been revealed. I've put a cut down here for the front of the head. This is the side profile. So the head will be actually on a lean looking down like that because she was pushing boulders down. So from here, the figure will be looking down on that angle there. The more wood I take off, the more I can see. It's like peeling back, layers of an onion. And then the ideas start flowing. Just a cut, for me, says 1,000 words, and it can tell me 1,000 different things on how that face is going to look, where that head is going to tilt, how far out the chest will protrude. Now I've made a cut off the front, realise that my centre line is out, so I can renew the centre line. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just go around with the small chainsaw, like a marker pen, and do some small cuts, just some indication cuts of where I need to do the heavier cutting out. My next few cuts will be into the backs of the legs here, right through, right across. So in there, straight through. The chest there, bottom of the stomach comes around here. The thighs around to the knees, down there. The arms and the shoulders here, which will come around to a hand. So this is quite a particular stage where the cuts have to be quite exact, because if they're not, it could throw the whole figure out of proportion. My ancestors were carvers. My life was predestined. Carving is something that you get great satisfaction, great passion from. It's how I see life, it's how I depict things, it's how I tell stories now, and something that is going to be left behind for a long time to come. We can just swing. I've got it to the stage where it's blocked out, and now I'll start bringing it into proportion, and to get it to the stage where I can start designing surface decoration. Mainly the little bit of ads work to do for taking off bulk pieces, and then chiseling. I've got a whole set of 50-odd chisels I can use to start refining, start rounding, start shaping, so that it starts to look like what I want it to look like. Yeah. Now hop on my back, come on. Go. Okay, see you later. I've had this ads probably for about 30 years, and it's done a lot of work. And just the same with my chisels, there's something that will stay with you for life. It's done a lot of work other than carving. It's done a lot of breaking and groundwork, and then I have to resharpen and repolish it again when I have to come carving wood. But if my son or somebody else in the family wants to carry on, that these will be passed on to them. I hope that whoever they go to, they're treated with the same respect, and they can go on through the generations, because they'll last forever. That's why Maori bargained with the early Europeans over the metal, over the steel, because it was a lot better than the stone that they were using. Whakarewerua is the place where I grew up in. I've lived in many different countries and many different places around the world, but home is where the heart is. It's your foothold, and you know, I just love it here. People pay thousands and thousands of dollars to travel here and come and see where I'm living, so I consider myself very lucky. Growing up in Whakarewerua village was unique because of the tourism that we've been born into. When you're born into it, it's normal. That's why Maoris from Rurutu are such great entertainers, because they entertain the tourists. We have a river that runs through the village, and my mother used to dive for coins. They used to call them penny divers. Tourists would throw money into the river, we'd dive for the coins, put it in our mouths. That gave us money to go to the shop and go to the movies. Penny diving has been a part of tourism here for many, many years. It's part of why I named my art gallery Penny Haka Gallery. Between the 30s and the 50s, the kids used to do a haka on the bridge for a penny, hence the name Penny Haka. Using the chisel is where you get to design and you get to shape, and each cut will make a difference. Before you make each cut, you've got to make sure that it's not going to go too deep. Going too shallow is okay because you can take a little bit off each time, but if you go too much with one cut, then it's going to throw everything out. The ngāwha is the hot pools, the geothermal activity. It's wonderful for bathing, especially if you have any ailments. We always came for a hot bath after playing rugby or some physical sport, because you'd be fixed up afterwards. Every hot pool around this district has a name. It was given a name because it had a purpose. Whether it was the pool where Kuru Naituku, the bird woman, came to her demise while she was chasing hatupatu through and around the hot pools. Another story is where they used to wash the bones of the decomposed bodies before they placed them in caves, because back then we didn't bury people in the ground. We have a bath now which is called the hirere. It's where women after giving birth used to go there and wash. Each pool, each hot pool, each cave has a name and it has a meaning and it has historical significance. We have hangi pits, which are hot pools for cooking, boxes built over steam coming out of the ground. Tangohia te kāpapa. Titiro kāpati, kāanga, riwai. I cook from time to time because it's quite easy just to throw all your food into a pot. Kukume. Drop it into the hot pool, cover it up, come back 2 hours later and your food, you haven't spent any money on the electricity. It's totally healthy because it's been steamed. Many people in the village still live day to day the bathing and cooking because it's a free resource, and I think everybody should be able to use it. have a 5-year-old son, and he's going to grow up here as well. This will be, an integral part of his life. He can always come back and use the baths for bathing and use the pools for cooking like we still do now. Wherever he goes throughout the whole wide world, he knows this is his tūranga waiwai, this is his place. We always be whānau family here for him.
Awesome.
Outside.
We should get some on the side.
Okay.
Mutunui, waiwai, mutunui. Amini. Too hard.
The Maori language wasn't a written language, so the only way to retain things was either by carving or by memory. Before we had pens, before we had writing pads, it was the only way you could record stories, myths and legends. It was the only way that you could create something that could be there for the future. Maori carving in days of old was a very taboo process. When a carver was carving a meeting house or eri carving, it would be a place where women weren't allowed to enter. It was also a place where smoking was totally prohibited, or the eating of food. And breaking those laws of tapu or taboo, sacredness, would result in very severe punishment from te ao wairua, the spiritual realm. Māori was so attuned to the spiritual realm, and that's how I believe we received a lot of the art and things you see well entrenched in traditional Māori today. There was a chap by the name of Rurutu who went down to Tangaroa. Tangaroa is the ocean, and there was a meeting house there. There he was held captive, and he managed to escape. With his escape, he was able to bring back some of the carvings from the meeting house, which he brought back to the physical world, or te ao marama, which is our realm. That's where carving came from, and that's the sort of carving that you see on most of the meeting houses around the country today. I don't think Māori carving will ever fade away. It is very much a strong part of Māori tradition today. I've had lots of thoughts about, the future of Māori artwork. The materials will definitely change. A Māori carver of the future might be somebody who's designing on a computer. I'm almost certain, because I'm starting to do that. I'm going down that avenue now. And having them 3D printed certainly saves you getting dirty and dusty. But there's always going to be somebody who wants something done the way it was always done, with a chisel and a mallet. Oh no, it's imbalance. get it on. Got to get it right on target. Since I've taken so much wood off, it's made it considerably lighter. From what used to be 500 kilos is probably now down to about, I guess, 230 kgs now, which is using balancing techniques with the scissor lift. It's quite easy to maneuver and roll around. Today I'm just defining around the thigh area. I'm going to start defining the rock so that it actually looks like a rock. And once I've got it all in proportion, then I'll just start cleaning up with a chisel. The bigger the chisel, the more wood it's going to take off. The smaller the chisel, the finer the design. My large gouge helps me to sculpt, taking off large pieces of timber. The flat chisel is probably the next tool to start rounding off, because in Maori carving everything's organic, it's rounded, you know, it's like nature. How I got into carving was when I left school. I was in a kapahaka group, a performing Māori arts group, and I needed a taiaha or staff, a carved staff to perform on stage with. So I went to my uncle and asked if he could help me. He was a carver. I actually asked if he could do it, and he said, "No, I won't do it. I'll help you do it." And I ended up carving with him in his garage, made my taiaha. I made a few other art pieces, but while I was carving there, a couple of gentlemen turned up and said there's a new carving school opening up down in Pōneke in Wellington. And my uncle said, "Right, you're going down to that carving school." I actually wanted to go for a ride on the bus to Wellington because I'd never been further than Tauranga, which is an hour away, and I wanted to go to check out the big city. And from there I gained a scholarship to go and study in Italy. Travelled extensively, met many other artists working and travelling through Europe.
Oh, te wihi.
Yeah. Tui.
He's cool, eh?
I want him to be his own man when he grows up, and whatever he decides to become, I'll support it. If he decides to take up art, if he wants to become a painter or a sculptor, it's entirely up to him. Although I would like him to jump out of aeroplanes because that's the sport that I love doing. So as soon as he's old enough, he's going to be jumping out of a plane with me. I would say I'm over halfway, and the face, I've got it to the stage at the moment where I can play around with it and make it look prettier or make it look mean, just add a bit of character. now's the time where I can start freestyling, trying out different things, especially with the hair, because I haven't predetermined what the hair's going to look like, so I'm just going to freestyle it, bit of trial and error, and see what looks good, what doesn't. Lots of things I can do, make it long and wavy, you know, short, tight, cropped, whatever. But usually, whatever the shape of the timber is, helps me to determine how it's going to end up. This is a finer detail, long, sort of arduous type of work, but it really does make a difference to the finished product. Carving has changed considerably from 800 years ago through to today. It's ever changing now, but we still seem to be using the same traditional styles and patterns. I'm constantly looking to progress Maori carving, and that might be in the contemporary sense and the more modern sense. Maori carving it's not everyone's cup of tea. From day one of carving, I always asked why we carve our ancestors looking so grotesque. In Māoridom, there's usually a reason for everything, and the protruding tongue is in defiance. The three fingers has many, many different meanings. You'll find each iwi, each tribe will almost certainly have their own story for it. Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, birth, life and death. Tiki coming from the stars. Tiki only had three fingers. You know, who was Tiki? Some say he was first man, or he was the introduction to the outside world, the spirit world, and that being had three fingers. Okay. The small V chisel is great for designing, doing beautiful carving techniques and designs. Oh, I might just roll it on its side so I can finish it. Tā moko is the art of tattooing, which was usually for men, the face, and the women predominantly wore it on the chin. The moko kauai was introduced at puberty, and it was only given to those of high rank. A person's moko, or moko on a carving, was your signature. Someone looking at the person who was wearing a moko straight away understood their genealogy, what line they come down through on the mother and the father's side, whether they were well versed in warfare, whether they were great orators. I still hold great value to it, and I think it is being bandied about so easily as a fashion statement, as a design statement today, with people not fully realising what they have and what they possess. I'm going to make up a moko for her, and it's going to be one of beauty. Everybody's faces are different, the contours are different, so you have to design to the person's face, and a sculpture or po is no different. Moko kauai for women carry a specific design, and it's usually from their tribe or their iwi. It would be better for me to carve something from my whakapapa or genealogy that my ancestors before me have used, rather than to copy it off somebody else from another tribe. That way you're safer, and that way there's no arguments. If you look closely at the design, it actually looks like two manaia facing away or facing into each other. Manaia are bird-like figures, but they're also what we call, I guess, sliders into the spiritual realm and both the physical realm. Carving is part of my identity. There are lots of young Maori out there today who feel they have to wear a tattoo or moko to depict who they are. I guess it's because I do the carvings, that's what makes me Maori. I know exactly who I am and where I come from. Paua is an abalone shell. It's something that's found around the shores of New Zealand. It was a beautiful shell to begin with. It reflected every colour of any eye. In the dark, they still shimmered, you know, in the moonlight. It represented so many different things. A lot of Maori women, they assimilate it to the womb. Cute. Carving and art it's my passion now. It comes easily and it comes naturally. And it's what I can do till the day I die. There's no retirement age. I enjoy all of it, from start to finish. For me, it's therapeutic. It's something that I can go and do to take my mind off of things and be creative all at the same time. You know, you get rewarded with a beautiful piece of artwork. When I started carving Hine Te Ariki, I didn't see what it was going to look like from the beginning. I just began to carve, so I was able to put my own feeling about who she was and what she looked like into the carving. Sometimes you'll end up with a one-off when you least expect it. I've created what I needed to for the story that I'm telling. When I have an exhibition, I like to try and show something that nobody else has done. It's a chance to celebrate what I've just finished with Hine Te Ariki, the po, and see what sort of reaction comes about. There has been a great renaissance in Māoridom for reviving the culture, and I'm pleased to say that I'm an integral part of that. Carving Hine Te Ariki and all the other traditional pieces that I carve, these pieces are going to be around for, you know, well after I'm gone, and will be recorded as part of Māori tradition.